Okay, so welcome folks. And today I'm here, Rowena with Sindalis. Can you give a little wave, Sindalis? And we are so lucky as to have the chance to ask Nola and L'Oreal a few questions about Black Nature Connection experience. And I just want to quickly introduce these two. Nola is an early childhood teacher, a writer. She offers anti-racism and anti-bias trainings, and she is the founder of Kereke Freedom School, creating curriculum focused on decolonization and liberation through play. Welcome, Nola. We're really glad you're here. And we also have L'Oreal Hawks Williams. She founded and directs the nonprofit called New Leaf, No Earth Wasted, Living Ecological Awareness Farm. And the mission of that organization is to educate underrepresented communities about climate change, sustainable food systems, and ways to adapt to a more eco-friendly lifestyle. And yeah, they both do beautiful work. They're both amazing parents, and they've both agreed to share about their experiences. So having had the delight of introducing them, I'd actually like to ask Sindalis if you'd be willing to just ask them some getting to know you questions.
Hi, thank you both. So the first question that I think would be great to start with is talking about your family of origin and how you describe yourself, how you identify yourself.
I guess I'll go first. My name is L'Oreal, and my family's origin, my mom and dad are from Virginia, Petersburg, Virginia, and they came to Detroit maybe like in the early 70s. No, yeah, the early 70s. And I identify as Black, and sometimes African American, more so Black. Was there any follow-up more to the questions that I didn't get to?
No, thank you. Okay. Yeah, thank you. How about you, Nola?
I'm Nola Akinde, and my family of origin, my mother is from the Bahamas, and my father is from Nigeria. I grew up in Miami, so in a very bustling, big, culturally rich city compared to where I live now, especially in Ypsilanti, particularly being surrounded by a lot of African people and people from all over the Caribbean. And I identify as Black, mostly, often as Afro-Caribbean, just to name specifically that my family, my mom being Bahamian and my father being Nigerian, but also the fact that there's sort of a particular, that Blackness is really broad and vague, and that within the African diaspora, there are some things that are particular to the Caribbean that are just sort of part of the way that I grew up and the way that I understand the world.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm wondering if there were any traditions or rituals that were especially important in your family when you were a child that you'd like to share about.
As far as my family is concerned, we pretty much grew up on traditional American traditions, you know what I mean, Christmas and such. As I've gotten older, I've shared those things. After doing my own searching for my own history, because unlike Nola, she has awareness of where her ancestors are from. I'm not sure to how far extent that is, but for me and my immediate family, our history only goes so far due to slavery. And so a lot of our traditions are rooted in other American traditions, and but you will find through research and like just talking to elders and older family members that a lot of things were passed down through um, the Black ancestors, the Black enslaved ancestors, but sometimes it's hard to tease out what is what. And so, um, as far as like our traditions, I would say they are supremely family oriented. And so it's just that we really hold to a high regard of just being together and this breaking bread together. A lot of people's lives are super busy, and you know it's a good thing to count on a time where you know that you're going to come to a certain place or city or someone's home, and you're going to see everyone. And so, yeah, I would say our family traditions stem along very strongly in just um, gathering and just being around each other.
So does that meals? Is that like in my family, we just ate dinner like in front of the television basically, you know? What
Mhm.
are there like particular kind of ways that you would like to gather or in your family or certain holidays that were especially important, like birthdays or
Yeah, birthdays are big. They've gotten smaller over the years because a lot of the children grow up and then we get new little children and stuff. But sometimes there's a gap. And but Christmas was always big. Um, like everyone would come to gather for Christmas, and I would say that that was our main um, gathering of the year. But now, it's interesting how things change because um, now these days that's not our biggest thing that we do. Now with more awareness and people taking the time to research their history, our biggest celebration is Juneteenth.
yeah, thank you. Um, Nova, how about you?
Yeah, I think similar to L'Oreal, um, in my family of origins, just sort of gathering together around food was really huge. My mother has 6 siblings, and throughout most of my childhood, everybody lived within like 15 minutes of each other, and so we got together a lot, like all all the time, every month, at least once a month. There was some sort of birthday or anniversary or major holiday or something that sort of brought everybody together at one of my auntie's houses or my grandmother's house sometimes. um, so lots and lots of time together, lots and lots of food, peas and rice, comforters if we're lucky. um, and also, when my mother left home in the 80s and she went to college, she sort of dove really intentionally into the Afrocentric scene that was happening in DC at the time. And that's how she met my father. And so we were also very much raised in Yoruba spiritual traditions. Um, and so culturally, I got the experience of both, growing up with my Bahamian family members and all of my cousins and my aunties and that experience, as well as sort of having spiritual practices and traditions rooted in Yoruba culture, and sometimes adapted for the world that we live in now, but very much centered on as much as possible sort of ancient customs and ritual as well.
If I could, I'd love to just really notice the differences in your stories, some similarities, family being important and food being important, and a lot of coming together. But you come from different backgrounds, and one of the things we talked to each other about before we got started was that we're trying to understand and learn more about Black people and nature connection and your family experiences, but that's such a big umbrella, and we're really asking you to represent yourselves, and we'll all learn through that. So thank you both so much for just sharing yourselves, and whatever you feel like sharing with us today. Yeah.
So getting closer to the topic of nature connection, I'm wondering if either of you have a favorite memory from childhood around nature connection.
What's funny is that for the longest time, I never saw any nature connection in my childhood. Like, I always thought of myself as like a city kid, and I was like, there was no nature. There was no nature to connect to. And now as an adult and I reflect, I'm like, oh, but we went to the beach every single week. Like, that's that's huge. And I got to play outside as much as I wanted to all year because it was never cold. And so I think just what I think of as nature is really shifting and evolving as I grow into adulthood. But my favorite thing, my favorite thing was just going to the beach and pretending to be a mermaid and being like, all right, today's the day. I know that I'm really a mermaid, and I know my mermaid family is gonna come and get me. Today is the day, it's happening. And I would just like swim out as far as I could and put on like these sea grape crowns, and just being in the water and knowing that was a space for me. And I was always comfortable there. So that's my favorite, like, little kid nature play memory.
I really love that. That was so fun to hear about that. And I was thinking you would have some pretty yummy outdoor stories growing up in a really warm place.
Yeah, that's so awesome that you got to go to the beach every week. I love the water, but I'm also like super afraid of drowning. And so it's like this like reverence for it, but deep respect for it. I know what it can do. But like as I grew up in the city, and but I guess I would say I was always like a curious wanderer. If yeah, I remember being little and just making a rock collection, and I would try to get the smoothest rocks. And like, oh, this is the smooth rock collection. And this is the more rocky, bumpy one. But the smooth rocks that was everything to me. And I had set them all on the curb, and like, so everyone could see the collection of these rocks. And then as then I recall, when we moved in, I would say maybe like preteen years, we had a balcony, a nice big house in a historic area, Detroit, and there's a lot of historic areas, but the Boston Edison district, and it had this big balcony, and I would just go out there and lay on the balcony, and all night long, sometimes lay on the grass and just look at the stars. I just wanted to know what was out there. It just fascinated me.
Thank you for that. That balconies are so special too, I think, for kids. They have this, it's like a nest, Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds so safe, as a child, to be in that little protected space and be able to be out at night on your own, experiencing the big wide sky. That sounds so nice. Okay, so continuing, with our beautiful friends, I would just love to ask both of you what you love about being a nature connected Black person. And, as a partner to that, what's difficult about being a nature connected Black person? And whatever comes to you is great.
I'll take it first. What I love being about, what I love being about, what I love about, what is wrong with my brain right now? I'm like, what I love about, what I love about being a nature connected Black person is that I feel really connected to my people. Earlier I was stating how, there's only so much in my uh, family history I can go back to, but being connected to the land and to nature, it makes me feel like I am that is my connection. That is my way to touch back to the people that I had that was severed contact with. You know what I mean? My ancestors and traditions. Because the more I want to learn about the land, the more I learn about the people who tended the land, the cultures, and things that kept civilizations going. And like right now, being an ecologist or an eco-centered person, we want to try to save the planet, right? And so we're trying to undo all that's been done in these last couple hundred years. And so you find yourself trying to search back into what were other people doing, and how the world was changing for so long before we came along, and with our bright ideas. So when you're looking for these answers, you do get you find ways that you're connected, and you find these little pathways back to the past, and it makes me feel good, like I'm on the right track or something.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Nature connection is intensely interwoven with people connection for you and ancestry. Yeah. And you, Nola?
Yeah, I'm struggling to find exactly the words, but I want to, I guess, amplify what L'Oreal said, that and maybe I would frame the question a little bit differently, that for me, all Black people are connected to nature, and it's the quality of our connection and the awareness of our connection that maybe we're talking about. But we're all fundamentally reliant on and a part of nature, all of us. And all Black people and Indigenous people and other people of color, because of our relationship with Earth, because of the relationship that we've been able to maintain for a longer period of time than our European siblings, we have that. We're already connected. We only have to go back one generation, two generations to have ancestors who knew in every part of them that they are nature, that we are nature. That connection is very present for us in a different way. So the quality of the connection and the awareness of the connection, I think, is the thing that I've been able to grow into. I think I used to sort of pit them as an either or, and now I'm sort of growing into the awareness that it's not a choice. It just is. And what do we do with that? And then I think similarly to L'Oreal, it's that I learn about myself, that I learn about what offerings I have for my children and for other people in the community when I'm able to maintain awareness of that connection, when I'm able to sit with myself, like my actual body self, and also myself being like this planet and all of the other cohabitants. So yeah, that's sort of what my mind is doing right now. What's coming up for me is it's to me allowing myself to grow deeper roots and to have a more complex understanding of who I am and where I've come from, and the what it takes for us to survive, what it takes for us to continue to thrive and innovate.
Mm. Sounds like you were answering your own question, what do we do with it? So that how is it to be a nature connected person? You really took it and said, what kind of nature connected person and what do you do with it? And then you're taking it and looking toward the future. Yeah. Thank you.
I like that notion that we all have it in us. It's just, a question of the quality and the awareness of what you're even getting. Like you said, you went to the beach every week, but you didn't think that was nature. And yeah, and that's like one of the biggest things that we like try to not teach, but we are big on is awareness at Newly. This is providing a space and opportunity for people to just have a moment to be aware of their surroundings and get a different perspective of what it is that they're doing um, out in this world that we are a part of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what allowed me to sort of get that was just in the last few years thinking about Harriet Tubman in a different way, thinking about Zora Neale Hurston in a different way, and being like, oh, like, I think I sort of fell into the trap in my early 20s of like, oh, well, Black people haven't been allowed to be connected to nature and we never play outside and blah, 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 blah. Like I had internalized all of these untrue stories about what it means to be Black and outside, what it means to be Black and tend the land. I had a lot of big conflict with my mother over me wanting to go into like gardening and farming and me wanting to be like covered in soil at the end of my days and me wanting to like spend hours and hours and hours bent over in the garden. And even though her grandmother was a farmer in the Bahamas and grew food for all of her 11 children and all of the neighborhood, my mother still had internalized this idea of like, that's we only garden when we have to, but that we get to now be doctors and lawyers and other things, and that tending the earth is beneath us. And we know that's not true. Like, it's not true. That is a lie that has been forced on us and fed to us, but it's not true. And so I had internalized that for a while as like I was a different kind of Black person because I wanted to tend my connection with nature. And then I was blessed enough and able to humble myself enough to be like, oh, wait a second, like you didn't make this. Like you're not trailblazing this. This is ancient. This is beyond you. Like this has everything to do with you and nothing to do with you and your ego. Yeah, and that's been a really huge blessing because I think for a while, speaking to the part of what's difficult, I think for a long time I felt isolated and I felt like I had to perform my Blackness in a particular type of way. And that meant either choosing to be outdoorsy or choosing to love Black people and be Black. And no, like I don't. And I won't, and I refuse that and I reject that. And so I felt a new sense of freedom that like, I don't have to be afraid to go into the woods. That is my home. I don't have to be afraid to be outside at night. Like that is my home. But I've had to, and that's still in me. And I have to listen for the deeper voice, the truer thing, because there's a lot of chitter chatter about what we can't do, particularly as Black women, what's not safe for us, what we shouldn't be doing. And still there's something truer that tells me there's so much value and so much wisdom in being outside and playing in the dirt and identifying all of these different types of plants. Even if this specific place of the Midwest is not my ancestral land, there's still so much wisdom for me to learn about.
I totally agree with all you just said. Like, I think that's a big problem with a lot of Black people. It's like, oh no, we left that down south. And, you know, I have a sister that's like outside. Who are you talking to? I'm not going outside. Like, this year was the first time she really got comfortable with fire pits because we had to be outside if we wanted to get together, you know. And so he's coming around, and, you know, it's all about getting a different perspective and opening up your mind to like different possibilities and being willing to unlearn all that was taught to us, because a lot of, like you said, there's a lot of just falsehoods that people just take into like oh, this is gospel. Black people don't swim. And then like but all me and my siblings know how to swim. Once, you know, like you just said, you know, like come on, like why do we hold these things? But these things are very detrimental to our growth as people, as like full human beings. So we have a lot of unlearning to do. And one thing I will add before we move on is that I've noticed, like, you know, a lot of people don't want to be connected to like farming and stuff because of those notions. But the people who I have seen and have given testimonies as far as their lives, how they've changed since they've gotten into farming or gardening, they say it's the best thing that they could ever have done. It changes their outlook on life, changes their health, and it changes the community because farming is a community-oriented activity. You know what I mean? And you need many hands, and you share your food, and you know, it's all this. It's so much under that umbrella of gardening, or just being outside.
Absolutely. And what you're saying about farming and gardening, I've experienced. And I was even just messaging with my dad, who's in Nigeria right now, and he lives in Lagos, but he moved temporarily back home to the country. And he was like, we, you know, Nigerians right now are fighting against the police state. They're fighting against police brutality right there with other Nigerians. And he was like, look, we can talk all we want to talk, but if we can't grow our own food, even in this beautiful, fertile land, if we're taking all of our resources and exporting them, and then we have to import just to survive, it's not going to work. There is no liberation without the ability to feed ourselves, right? So I think that a lot of that misinformation was given to us on purpose, right? Black people don't know how to swim. Why? Because if you swim, you can get somewhere. Like, that was on purpose. Oh, no, let's reject farming. Why? Because if you can grow your own food, you don't need Kroger. Like, if you can grow your own food, you don't need the government to supply food for you. If you can grow your own food, you can work for yourself. You're not relying on a check from somebody else, right? So much of this misinformation is intentionally drilled into us so that we do not have the tools we need to thrive. Like, there's nothing inherent about Blackness that means that we have to have the rates of cholesterol, diabetes, high blood pressure, cancer. There's nothing inherent about us that makes that happen. That's on purpose. And that, to me too, just like the freedom that comes from being able to grow my own collards, even if nothing else takes, knowing that I have that is huge. The freedom that comes in knowing that, like, my 10 and 7 and 3-year-olds can identify more edible plants when we go for a nature walk than I can. I'm like, oh, thank God, because y'all can make it. Y'all can do something that I can't do, right? No, it's a gift. Like all of that is a gift. It's our inheritance. That belongs to us more than whatever falsehoods we've been given.
Yes. I think also when you grow something, like whether it's food or a plant, but you start it from a seed and you nurture it. I don't know. Now I can't speak for everyone, but for me, there's a realization. There's something that sparks inside of you when you see that this is all you need. The free stuff, the water, the sun, the soil is here, and this plant is going to grow and sprout for something for me that's going to sustain my body and my family. And something just clicks inside of you when you grow. It's like you sprouted in revolution or something like that. You're like, it's something that you're like, no. Why was I just going along with that notion of I can grow my own food. I don't have to do this or that and the other. And so when that clicks, then other things click. And you just start to wait a minute, they're running over these farmers over here, or wait a minute, these people are, there's food injustice, and you like find all these different things, and they kind of like just, to me, I know it doesn't happen for everyone, but I think it happens more often than not.
I totally agree with that, and I wonder how much of that is the patience and the silence that you're invited into / you don't have a choice when you're waiting for something to grow. Right? Like there is a certain type of spaciousness that we get to experience when we're tending land, when we're in relationship with land, that we don't have with email and text message. You know what I mean? Like all the other things in my day, but there's something about like, if you don't take care of this plant, there are consequences. So you have to be present, and you have to slow down, and you have to wait, and the harvest comes when it comes. Like I can't force that. There is no deadline that I can make it make. And so I think something for me at least is like I'm invited into a type of peace, because so much is in your control in a different way, but so much is out of my hands. And I think that allows for us to just like stop and look around and assess our lives differently than we normally do.
Okay, both of you, when you talk about growing plants, you just sparkle. And I think I just want to reflect back. I think there's a piece too of like you're invited into the magic. It's magic that a seed turns into a plant. And it's when you talk about all the affirming things that I hear from both of you that you get from Nature Connection, that I belong, that I can feed myself, that I can like I belong, I'm here, and this land supports me, right? There's a magic in making a seed propagate. And it's like a message, like, yeah, you and me, like we, like this seed and me, we're together in this magic. And I see both of you just like, I feel like there's a piece of magic in it that you touch just from how you talk and I wonder how you feel about that.
Yeah, all of that, exactly. It's magical. It's watching that, seeing that seed has everything in that little case. If you use a tree for an example, to become this 50, 100-foot tall tree, this thing that it's a habitat, and even like at camp, and you see the tall grasses. I think about what kids far along used to run through these grasses. The seeds, these seeds have the DNA from millions of years, ago. And we get to take a part of it. We get to be a part of it. It's magic. That is magic to me.
Yeah, I'm with that as well. And I think something that I often LOL. I'm over here just like ruminating. I was just saying that I think a couple things came up for me is sometimes I just like to imagine out in the woods like all the trees have seen. But when you just said, L'Oreal, about the you know, the grasses and the trees having thousands and thousands and thousands of years of DNA in them, and I was like, oh, we have that too. Like something in that, the way that you said that just clicked in me differently, that like we have that too. Like everything that they have, we also have within us, literally, spiritually, emotionally. Yeah, and I think that's part of the magic. And then the last magic piece for me that comes up is this summer, as I was tending to the garden and I was talking to my kids, and we were talking about like why you sing to plants and why you talk to plants, and the power of words. And I was like, well, we're casting spells. Like every time we're talking, we're casting spells. And so when we're looking at this little baby cabbage and we're talking to the baby cabbage and we're affirming that baby cabbage, like we're casting spells. And the same way we speak over our plants, we speak over our children, right? And we should speak over ourselves. So yeah, just that magic is like on so many different levels for me.
Thank you both so much for your time and your heart, and for opening your view of nature connection up to us. And perhaps we'll get to ask you more on another day. But for today, I think maybe we'll wrap it up. And if anybody has a final word they want to say, please do.
Thank you for having me and wanting my opinions and thoughts. I'm happy to share them. I'm really happy to connect with you, Nora. And yeah, like some conversations are hard, but they must be had for healing. And I like to think that like today I'm starting something that someone's going to be talking about centuries from now, and they can count on me to leave some breadcrumbs to find them. You know what I mean? Like you can look back to me. I'm going to do all I can to make sure that any chain that's coming from me isn't broken. So, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you, L'Oreal. I'm really glad that we had this time to connect, even just briefly. And I hear so much of my own like thoughts and questions sort of reflected back, and that's really powerful and affirming. And I can't wait to have more time to hear more about your experiences and your learning. And the last thing that you said too just reminds me, like, I often feel stuck just because the work is so big. Like, you know, my work is like trying desperately to like decolonize and indigenize and also do it with like joy so I can be happy and live a long time, and also talk about racism because we got to fix it, and so many things. And I think sometimes I feel just like very overwhelmed and very millennial about it, and I'm like, can we be done? Like, can we just fix it today and it's over? And then you know, probably my great grandmother or somebody just reminds me like, no, like we are harvesting the wisdom of our grandmother's grandmothers so that we can plant seeds for our grandchildren's grandchildren. Like all of this work is always intergenerational and multi-generational and happening on so many different spheres at the same time. And so I just want to offer that as well. That's a reflection that sort of helps me to stay steady, and to continue the course even when it feels overwhelming and big as it is.
Thank you.
I know we gotta go. but I just want to thank both of you so much. Like I'm just so touched. Like my heart is so full. Just how generous you were in your sharing. And I just want to thank both of you very, very, very much.
Okay. Until soon.